Well, hello, I am Matt Williamson, and we are going to talk Mason Rudolph today. And I really like this move. And you brought this up many times. I've kind of been lobbying for bringing back Rudolph, just because having an extra adequate quarterback is never a terrible idea. And adequate's not the best word in the world, best word in the world for your quarterback signings and draft picks and all that. But trust me, when I was at ESPN for 10 years, right about this time of year, I wrote my least favorite article of the year. They asked me to rank 32 backup quarterbacks post-draft. And I beg you to try this. Just even pick a division. Even pick this division. Backup quarterbacks are sparse, and it's brutal out there. And to me, Rudolph is a middle-of-the-road backup. And that has a lot of value in a league that played 69 starting quarterbacks last year. There were several teams that started 4 different quarterbacks, and now the Steelers have 3 that you can start and potentially win a game with, and not embarrass themselves and run the offense. And the familiarity with the offense is immense to me. So I think now these 3 were all in camp last year. I'm sure it's very clear. Kenny's the 1, Mitch is the 2, Mason, you're the 3. And I'll be really interested to see how they spread out those snaps. And all 3 are going to make the team. They don't have to worry about these camp arms and those type of things anymore. You know who your 3 quarterbacks are going to be. But there's some angles here. From what I've seen, I didn't see the money. I assume it won't be huge. But it sounds like Rudolph signed a 1-year deal. That's not official yet. Mitch only has 1 more year on his deal. Before this, I had thrown out the idea, why not tack a year on to Trubisky's contract and lighten his cap hit this year, and then you have next year's backup set. And then even when the Rudolph stuff came up, I thought, what if you signed Rudolph to a 2-year deal? They only signed him to a 1. Send Mitch on his way after this year. He'll probably help you in the comp pick world, Trubisky leaving. And Rudolph's, boom, easy number 2, super familiar. Him and Kenny will get along, all that stuff. So now you got 2 that are coming up after the season. Now, this isn't Montana and Young hitting the open market where you can't bring either back. Even if 1 or 2 of them have a very good year or some really good starts, or heaven forbid Kenny gets hurt early and Trubisky plays 12 games and wins 9 of them. I mean, you probably would have to send him on his way. But also there's the factor of now, keep talking about quarterback injuries around the league. If someone goes down from another team, I think you'll get calls about Trubisky, and maybe he's worth a 5th round pick a month ago, but in 3 months he's worth a 3rd. You know what I mean? And you're already set at the backup spot. They're going to keep 3. They always keep 3. The pecking order is very obvious. I don't have a strong opinion of how they'll divvy out snaps in terms of the 3 preseason games, but I don't think we have to figure that out on May 16th at the moment. So I like this quite a bit. I mean, again, you have 3 quarterbacks that, frankly, the Rams, the Panthers, these teams that were just riddled with injuries would have killed for last year. I mean, in Trubisky and Rudolph in particular, backup types. So I do think those guys have value, and why not keep a known? You know exactly who this guy is, hard worker, not a huge upside, but I think he's a long-term number 2 in the league. Trubisky probably views himself as more than that, and I understand that, and which is probably why he wants to hit the open market a year from now, and maybe he gets a chance to shine, whether it's preseason or due to injuries, or maybe Kenny falls on his face, which I don't think he will. But it's a good situation for all. It's certainly a buyer's market without question, across the league. And I'm a little shocked that someone didn't have a spot for Rudolph that was a little more favorable to make him a true number 2. Be back in a minute here to talk about some other potential roster rumblings. All right, yesterday the Steelers also had Quan Alexander in for a visit, a off-the-ball linebacker. Most of his time was with the Bucs. bounced around the league a little bit the last couple of years. I think he's been in the league 8 years, give or take. He's a third-round pick out of LSU. Ran like a 4.55 coming out. I mean, he is an athlete that flies around the field. Now, sometimes they bring these guys in for a visit. Bud Dupree comes to mind just for medicals. And I do think there are some Alexander medical stuff out there. He's a little bit smaller at his age and he's bounced around. Last 3 years, he hasn't played a ton of snaps, but he's been a part of defenses. Early on in his career, I thought he was a typical linebacker that got manipulated more and got by on athleticism, but he's gotten better in that regard. He's not a star. I mean, he's a roster filler dude that I think would compete with Roberts, although they're a lot different. I mean, Roberts is more the heavier take-on guy. Alexander's more the fly-around speed type dude. But I don't know that they decipher that as strongly, and certainly not as strongly as they once did. But my real takeaways from that visit are, I think they realize an off-the-ball linebacker needs to be added. I mean, again, it's not going to be Lambert or Kirkland, but they do need to add an off-the-ball linebacker into the mix that's likely to make the team, that's a veteran, that's been around the block. And so whether it's Alexander or Rashaan Evans, who I've brought up, or a player to be named later, I think that will get done at some point. The other thing, though, about Alexander is he has a little bit of a deficiency in that he has very little special teams, experience. He came to the league, quickly became a starter, never really did that at LSU. So what I'm familiar with, he has not done much special teams, which can be a problem with these guys that have been starters and not, late round picks that made their bones on special teams. They come in, start, and then never really get that experience. So doesn't mean he can't do it. I'm sure he could run down on kickoffs for you, but he's not an ace. If you were adding a linebacker for depth / competition, I would prefer that, as is the case with Roberts, which is maybe why he's signed and these others aren't, that I know he's an ace. So when he loses the starting job or isn't a prominent member of the defense, he's still helping me a lot on game day. I don't think Alexander's that guy. That doesn't mean he couldn't be, coached up and willing to do so late in his career. But he can run and he has some experience. He has some pop to him. He will hit you and, again, run and hit player. So I like where their head's at is really my overriding theme of today's podcast. I mean, Rudolph makes a lot of sense to me. Another off-the-ball linebacker that's been around the block that can run certainly makes a lot of sense to me. So keep commending this team in terms of their team building, their offseason, but I think it's really warranted. So there you have it. I have an article up that went up last night. That was, I guess, Monday night, about the Steeler offense, the youth on that side. I urge you to check it out. It might surprise you just how young they are. Interesting team build there as well. So I'll be back tomorrow. Over now.